Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another English episode. Mateus, today I don't have words to say how excited I am with this amazing lady that is in front of us, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be a great pleasure to have this podcast, and I don't gonna talk too much about it. And Xiran, can you introduce yourself? Tell us our guests, our public about you, about what you do, especially.
Yeah, definitely. Hi everyone, my name is Xinran. For those of you who don't know pronounce my name, I know many are not. So the X is actually pronounced like SH, and yeah, I'm a data engineer, and then I have been working as a data engineer for a long time. Currently, I work at Netflix, and I'm so excited to be part of this podcast.
What amuses me, really impresses me, is that she has only 27, but a huge experience with data engineering, software engineering, which is amazing. So tell me a little bit about your journey through software engineering to the data engineering world at Netflix.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it is kind of interesting how I get into data engineering, because when I was in college, I studied computer science, but I wasn't quite sure like what exactly I wanted to do after I graduate. But at that point, I thought, just pick up whatever is available in front of me and see if I like it and explore from there. So while I was in college, I actually found a student internship opportunity. And so as part of the internship, I was doing software consulting job. And at the beginning of the job, I was doing a lot more kind of web application testing. So we build a lot of automated tests for web application. And then it was interesting, this opportunity kind of arose with my manager at that point. And because for the testing, we have to maintain this Microsoft, I believe it's called Microsoft SQL Service database that contains all the user data. And then my manager asked me hey, we need somebody doing some of this data ETL job. Can you help us doing it? So at that point, I was super new to database. I didn't even know how to write SQL at that point. And so I thought, okay, you know what? I'll pick up the challenge. I'll learn. And but I was, in a way, I was really lucky because if it wasn't for that, I probably would never get into data engineering. And I actually really enjoyed doing that job, understanding how the SQL engine work, how to write SQL. And after that, I actually I took up more kind of data related courses in college. And then I just realized, I love working with data. And after I graduate, I started looking at data engineering work. And at that point, honestly, it wasn't a very straightforward, I would say a job hunting experience, because data engineering wasn't so well defined as software engineering. I felt when I was searching for, data engineering job, what it's like to be a data engineer, there wasn't clear definition. But all I know is hey, I love working with databases. I love working with data. I want to find a job like that. And at that point, actually, when I was in college, I had a mentor who was teaching some class, when I was in college, and then he was a lead data engineer at Target. So he referred me for this data engineer job at Target. And then that's where I found my first data engineering job.
Wow, that's interesting. What a nice, process, because you started with software engineering, then in some sort of extent you fell in love with data engineering, even though not being so, I still think that the data engineering is a little bit foggy sometimes in terms of understanding what the data engineer does behind the scenes, right? What the true activities that it does. And I still think there's a bunch of overlap in so many other areas. So sometimes it's a little bit convoluted to see, for example, if I apply for a job at a Target as a data engineer, may not be the same if I apply a job in Netflix. Could be different things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel this still applies to today. If you apply for a job at Netflix or apply for a job at Facebook or Google or any other company, just from my experience, the interview at different company, the scope of data engineer definition is a little bit different. Sometimes there's job that maybe you build more dashboard versus building more like data engineering system. So it's really depending on like which company it is, and then the scope of the work is very different. And also, like you mentioned, I feel like there isn't like a universal accepted definition of data engineering. I feel like when I talk to every different person, every person have their own definition. I mean, of course, I have my own definition too. I'm happy to share.
Me too. I feel exactly the same because I've been in different, interviews throughout different countries and companies. And what I've take out of this is that there is no common universal sense about what data engineering does. And it is actually, right? But that's not that true if you look for a back-end developer or front-end developer, a SQL database developer, a SQL database administrator. These roles are more, you have a true understanding about how they could be a little bit across the board. But data engineering, no. So yeah, it's a little bit awkward for me still because people commonly ask to us what data engineering is. It's just kind of hard to tell, without thinking too much.
Yeah, totally. That's why it's great that, you guys are producing so many content, including this podcast, talking with different people from data engineering, asking them, hey, what's your work like? And then we all get like more diverse perspective from everybody, what data engineering is like. And honestly, compared to a couple of years ago, I feel like now we have a lot bigger community, right? Like we have more kind of learning resources to understand like what different parts of data engineering is like. And I can only see that getting better in the future too.
Spot on. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, cannot agree more. And that's come my question that in your perspective, Xiran, what is data engineering? Because now that we're talking like we have like our point of view, you have yours. What is yours? Like, what you can say? What is data engineer for you?
Yeah, of course. Honestly, I feel like my perspective or my definition of data engineering kind of evolves also as I have more experience working as a data engineer too. Like if I compare my definition now versus 2 years ago, it's probably very different as well. I actually recently had the chance to give this presentation talking about like data quality from data engineering perspective. And then because it's not like a data dedicated conference, so I was thinking, before I talk about data engineering, let me talk about what data engineering is. And then I was really surprised how long I spent on that slide just thinking, okay, what is data engineering?
It's not a 1 minute talk. It just sometimes goes on and you dwelling on that, right?
Yeah, like, okay, how can I think of this like smart one line describing what data engineering is? And I come up with one, but let me know what you think. So my perspective of data engineering is about, making data accessible in optimized formats. Because without data engineering, there are data available, but they are not necessarily can be, processed to derive data insights in an efficient way. And then that's what I believe data engineering comes to play, where we can transform that data and make it accessible in, optimized forms. And when I say optimized forms, I would say like from 3 different perspectives. First of all, because I believe most data engineering systems we build these days are embedded with business logic because we build systems to solve specific data problems. And when we build those systems, we implement some business logic so that the data is easier to be used to solve specific business problem. And also another aspect is more technically is also about, making data available in optimized storage and also formats as well. Like just taking one quick example is like you put data in Cassandra versus Druid or versus Iceberg, right? And then that all depending on your use cases and also even the underneath format is different. Like are you going to store it in Parquet? Are you going to store it in Avro? And then it all depends on, hey, is the data going to be produced or consumed in a streaming fashion or more for analytical use cases in a batch manner, right? And also last but not the least, it's also about like the latency of the data, because there are just certain data signals, like they kind of lose value as the longer the delay it is. So depending on like your use case, what's your latency requirement, you kind of use different frameworks as well when you process the data. So, and also to summarize, that's what I mean by making data accessible in optimized forms. And also, last but not the least, no matter what this optimized form it is, ensuring high data quality is also part of data engineering too, because any of the data engineering output is used to derive data insights, answer certain business questions, and if the input of the downstream isn't accurate, then whatever decision you made on top of the data also isn't reliable either.
So basically, you blew my mind. You know why? No, yeah, it's true. Because, I've been into the data engineering world and the data world for the past 14 years. And I was kind of trying to find a pretty nice, how can I say, shock, like view of, or like a spotlight on how we can summarize data engineering. And I think that's perfect, because you can put on the sentence ability to make data accessible in an optimized form. You could tackle two important things. First, you could tell to the business that you're going to make data available and why. Mm-hmm. And then you're saying that it's optimized form, because as you said, there's so many downstream, there's so many sync possibilities. You can put data on data lake, you can put on Cassandra, you can put on MongoDB, you can put on BigQuery or Hive or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's basically, I think that phrase sums up, all the nature of the data engineering per se, which is just ability to make data accessible in optimized form. So I'm going to tell you in advance, I'm going to steal that from you now. I'm going to use this all over the place.
Would you add anything to the kind of the points I mentioned?
And to be honest, not I can think of, because it tackles the pretty much standard that we follow here. We are tackling business and technical, right, Mateus?
Yeah, and one thing that the station run that's made, like I saw like a post a few months, like a half a year ago. People say, no, today the analytics spectrum is more for batching. Yet people are talking about real time, and real time is for edge cases. And more, I see like it's not this way. Like if you talk about latency, like you say, like if the data losing value over time, you have to worry about latency. You have to know, you have a lot of tools to work with that. So make it completely sense to, like you want to say, like the idea of to have everything like optimize for business and technical, that's something that we always talk, but like you want to say, we didn't have like one phrase for that. But I say, okay guys, we have like an engineer, he has to understand the business, he has to understand the technical, he has to do this and that, but you don't have like a one phrase to put everything in one place, and that it was spot on. Like okay, the optimized form make total sense. So I can add any more.
Yeah, I could add any more. That's like perfect. Well said.
Yeah, I'll see maybe in a couple of years, I'll come back to podcast again. Maybe I'll have a different definition. Who knows?
Probably, yeah, who knows? It changes so rapidly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that covers up a little bit about the introduction section. And I know that we're going to go through a lot of questions and a lot of interesting stuff, which I'm dying to know. I would like to know this so badly, I'm just so excited.
Yeah, but let's do it.
Let's break it down a little bit, and let's start by you explaining to us what is the data engineering at Netflix, because as we said, we cannot like just saying that this is across the board, but what do you do specifically inside of Netflix as a data engineer?
Yeah. So honestly, every company have a different definition of data engineering. Netflix different compared to my previous companies as well. I would say at Netflix, data engineering is a well kind of organized organization and also a big team that we see as an important part for us to be data driven as a company. And what I love about being a data engineer at Netflix is that how much autonomy we have as a data engineering team. And also just the collaboration model between data engineering teams and also other teams makes like total sense to me. I can tell you a little bit more about how the collaboration model works. And so first of all, I think like maybe taking one step back, what kind of defines what data engineering team is part of has to do with how it gets involved when a business question arises and how it works with different teams. And one thing that's really great about being the engineer at Netflix is that I get to work with so many cross-functional teams. I get to know so many different systems as part of Netflix. And, part of it is like help me understand how the data flows in, how data is tagged for the business. But also I feel like I have enough context for me to make a decision about how to integrate with different systems and also like to make decisions about business logic to apply as part of the data systems that engineering system I build. For example, like whenever there's like a data project, and our team always get involved even at the planning stage, asking like, hey, this is kind of the business problem we're to solve. It could be something like, for example, one project that, which was one of my first projects where I had to build like a brand new data engineering system from scratch was, we were thinking of badging different titles based on how people rate different titles. And so I got involved from the very beginning, and they were just like, hey, this is the kind of product feature we want to experiment with. And what do you think is the data engineering work required on your end to be able to enable it? So we would actually at the beginning going through this like data exploration stage of what data do we have available today? Do we have anything that can power this feature at the moment, or do we have to build something new? What's the level of effort for it? To me, I think that's a very important step because in a way, every team has their own different priorities, right? And the one team might support different business domain. And so being involved at the product planning stage is really important to prevent burnout in a way, because you don't want to be in the middle of a quarter and then suddenly tell you like, hey, we want to do this. And then you have to reshuffle your plate trying to figure out whether you can take this on or not. And also just at the beginning, when the project's still being defined, with PMs or any other team, when you get involved early, you just get more business context about what people are thinking, what we're trying to achieve. And that was super helpful information for a data engineer like me. And also one thing that was really helpful was also that I get directly working with the, any of the engineering team who need to integrate with the data feed that I produce, either it's a table or something they have to subscribe to. And then from that part of partnership, I also get to know a little bit more about, hey, how is Netflix backend system working? How does it pull data? How does it power Netflix? And from that, I get to talk with the engineers, understanding like, hey, what's the best way for us to integrate here? There are just like so many tiny details you have to figure out. Like for example, one thing is that, hey, what happens if, there's a title that was very well rated by, our members. However, it's not available today anymore. Who's in charge of dropping that title from the badging? Or like, let's say, if we need to bump another title up to be qualified for this badge, who's going to, who's going to take care of that logic? And it's very fascinating for me. It's like how much thoughts and how many details you have to consider when building a product feature. Maybe at first sight you think it's relatively straightforward, but it comes in so many effort and discussions from different teams to make it work and also make it scalable.
And that's so spot on, because I think you're setting something that I truly believe here is that communication is key for everything that you do, right? Not only as technical people, but also as anything that you do in your life, even for relationships or anything, right? So communication is key of everything. Just, being able to talk with different personas, as you said, doing assessment in different areas, being involved in the planning phase helps you to understand and get the entire, or at least a good context, and not being able to only look at the surface and actually have 5% of deep down and you don't see that. But at least you have this idea to not have like a cookie cutter approach where you use this for all of these processes that you create. No, every challenge means different planning, different collaboration effort, different exploration stage. And you touched in a point that, in my data engineering life, so far it's been 7 years, I never ever seen, and I've been involved in big customers. I never seen someone saying, okay, we do a data exploration stage, right? That we just go for the data lake or explore the batch system or explore the data streams, the feeds, and see, okay, this is the picture that I currently have. So how we're going to take from there, and we're going to build our underlying systems around that, these pipelines of these projects. I'm not seeing this often in consulting engagement. So this is pretty fantastic that you guys are doing this type of exploration, because I think it's a key also as the planning stage, because this is a part of the technical standpoint that would be fantastic to have it, right?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like data exploration stage is so important, and sometimes I feel like underappreciated because
yes.
My experience working on data engineering projects is always like you're always going to find something unexpected along the way, and then you need extra time to handle those edge cases that you are seeing. And especially at the planning stage, like the more time you actually put to explore some of the data, like even pre-planning, the better you can plan so that you have a better estimate of level of effort across different teams too.
Perfect. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, like, one thing I really appreciate just from like a cross-functional collaboration perspective is just everybody is so open to learn from like domain experts, because like one project you're gonna have PM, you have designer, UI designer, you're going to have client UI team, maybe they have to touch something on Netflix UI implementing it, and then you have data engineers who have to make the data system that provides the data. You also have data scientists who look at the A/B test result, or if that's some personalization algorithm involved, there's going to be research engineers who do the part of work related to algorithms. So for pretty much all the project that's going on at Netflix on the data side, it's always a cross-functional collaboration. And I've always just appreciated how open everybody is to feedback from others. And also in a way, like it's in the culture about like context, not control at Netflix. And then I see just have so much, freedom and also responsibility to voice their opinions that actually impact how the project goes. This might not be everywhere, like in data, but at Netflix, I feel like I have the liberty of, making a recommendation based on my best understanding of the data and the data availability, and that I would actually change maybe some part of the project. And it's just really amazing, like how much kind of, I don't know, like, just as I see, you feel like you are always encouraged to voice your opinions, and then
you're a valuable person. You feel like valuable, right?
Yes, that's help
amazing.
shape the project.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Amazing. And that's a question that everybody that's listening to us wants to know. That's like, I can say like it's gonna be like the question that people are gonna look for. Okay, I want to know this as soon as possible. And of course, each one you can say, but which technologies of data engineering you guys are using inside Netflix, like for streaming, for batching, what you guys are more using, that you are more using on your team?
Yeah, of course. I think this is probably one of the common questions I get all the time, because people are curious, like, what kind of framework are you guys using for data engineering? So I would say like the answer is probably not very surprising. So for, at Netflix, we use Spark mainly for batch-based data processing. And then We mainly use Flink for event streaming at the moment. And, behind Flink, we use Kafka as the main message queue as well, although we do have some kind of abstraction built on the top. And I also have some Netflix-specific kind of infrastructure or libraries maintained by our infrastructure team as well. Regarding storage itself, we mainly use Iceberg and Netflix and as the main table format. And as you might know, Iceberg was actually originally created at Netflix, and I actually never used Iceberg before I joined Netflix, and it was just amazing, just how when one company maybe hit a bottleneck on certain technology, and then they start realizing, let's create our own thing.
Wow. Just on that note, batch, are you guys using S3 or HDFS to store data that sits on?
We used S3 to store the data.
Okay. And anything regarding orchestration-wise, like Apache Flow or any other tool?
So we have our own in-house framework for kind of workflow orchestration. Honestly, I'm not sure if it is open source or not, but previous Netflix, I have used Woozy and Airflow before, but honestly, it's very similar just from like the functional capability perspective, but also we would have a lot more in-house tooling that help us do more like allow us to do some of the data integration easier, and also doing the data quality auditing easier too.
Let's see if I'm gonna pick it right. For data warehousing, do you have something with, Hive or Apache not Apache
Pinot.
Superset. Not Apache Pinot is the other one. It's just, I forgot the name. But do you have something around this? Hive? Do you guys use Hive?
So Hive was actually the legacy format we used to have, but now we have mostly just moved to use Apache Iceberg now.
Okay.
Full Apache Iceberg.
Wow.
See?
So
they like Houseman.
that's impressive. And just using Spark to query, actually different frameworks to query Apache Iceberg.
Yeah, so I would say the table format itself is sort of decoupled from the processing engine because you can use Spark to process data that's stored in Iceberg format, but also internally we also use Trino as well as alternative query engine. And so, in a way, it's like the data format itself is kind of decoupled from the processing engine, and in a way you have more flexibility from that perspective.
Wow, that's beautiful. I was just wondering, we're going to get into that point, but I'm just wondering the table size of some of the largest tables. But I don't know if you have this number, but hold on, because we're gonna go for the iceberg real quick here. I think you talked a little bit about the methodology and process in how you guys collaborate inside of Netflix to make data available, build a project, just collaboration-wise. But is there any methodology or any process that falls like step one, just do this initial meeting to collect and gather. Second, do data exploration. Third, do you have some sort of like a well-defined step-by-step in how you guys usually approach problems and projects, or no? It's just kind of different ways.
I don't think we have an established process. If you read Netflix culture memo, it almost people don't like process because we just do whatever is the best, and we don't want to feel like there's a process that's stopping us from doing the best flow. But in general, I would say there's definitely some patterns, right? And also this is also could be different team per team as well. Usually when I talk to my research partners, I would tell them hey, I prefer to be involved at early stage, even if you're just exploring what kind of algorithm you want to build, you can involve me and I can help you understand from a data engineering perspective what is needed, what is already exists there. And also in a way I don't think there's a strict process.
Loved it.
We all work with We all have a different collaboration model, whatever works best.
A lot of Slack. You usually collaborate through Slack.
Yes, I would say like Slack is very huge at Netflix, and I recently posted a post on LinkedIn talking about I don't feel like no meeting day is a break for me because we have so many offline conversations, like Express going on all the time, and answering Slack, I feel like it takes half my day all the time. So we do a lot of offline communication on Slack.
That's impressive. You know why? Because usually on the consulting side of stuff, we have to kind of follow some procedures and steps to be able to do collection gathering, and then you just build a document, then you just come up with estimations, so on. So this consulting work, sometimes you can just build a step to step. And usually when we start to develop projects, there's a pretty much a standard procedure. But I totally agree with you that sometimes these procedures, they blocks your way to bring new things, or to consider different approaches, or being able to tackle different angles. So I love it, the idea that you can do different approaches, and that's pretty great. I think you're going to be able to learn way more than just only following that cookie cutter stuff and not being able to try different things. So love it.
Yeah, and also Netflix, we have this idea of an informed captain. So a lot of the time, captain? Yeah. So informed captain is usually this one person who is kind of be given the responsibility of making decisions on a specific matter. Although, I don't think we have a clear definition what the informed captain is, but from my definition, I feel like usually when you're an informed captain on a specific project, then you're the one who's in charge of gathering all the context possible, and you are going to be eventually the person who makes the decision. There's no kind of approval process because the informed captain is going to be trusted with this responsibility of gathering all the context possible from all the team and make the best possible decision based on the information that they know.
So it could be different ones depending on which project you just picked in.
Yeah, and also informed captain doesn't have to be a PM or manager. A lot of times it's actually IC. Which is interesting now that you may not know. I put in Google informed captain, and guess which site comes up first? Netflix culture. Oh, really? Okay. So it's
really super really. Yeah, super really.
Oh,
it's just first, if you put informed captain, now, at least for me, it shows up the first Netflix culture seeking excellent Netflix jobs. So interesting.
Oh, got it. So we do have a definition. It's actually okay. It's very clear.
It's very clear. Yeah.
Okay, so for every significant decision, we identify informed captain of the ship who's also an expert in their area. They're responsible for listening to other person's views and making a judgment call on the right way forward. So that is very close to what I described. So
yeah, pretty close. Yeah, you're not deviating. You didn't deviate it. So wow, it's fantastic. I'm gonna definitely go through that because it seems so interesting. So interesting. Okay. Nice. Good one.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the new terms I learned after I joined Netflix, and
I learned that now.
Me too. And how about the life circle of deploying the data pipeline? It's something that people probably gonna ask you, how you guys do the deployment when you we do the data exploration side, we already start to build everything, and then we come up with how I can do the development, the testing, the quality assurance in production. How you guys do it on Netflix?
Yeah, so I would say from an ownership perspective, usually whoever builds the data pipeline is responsible for also the maintenance and operation. Mm-hmm. And I would say this probably applies to most data engineering team I work on. So like even at Target and Confluent or at Netflix, like we have kind of domain-based engineering team who would build the data pipeline based on their best knowledge of this specific business domain. They would build the data pipeline, based on the business problem they're trying to solve, and then they're also responsible for maintaining it and the operational side. And I've also heard, I'm not sure if this model actually still exists these days, but I know that sometimes like there might be a more centralized data engineering team who do all the data engineering pipeline building like across all domains. And however, like what I've seen work the best is, and also for bigger organization, is that we will have domain, like we split kind of data engineering team based on domain. Like for example, like for my team specifically, we mainly support like most of personalization data needs. And then, but we also have data engineering team for finance data or for content. And each of the team kind of more specialized on building and maintaining data sets that belong to that specific business domain, so that you kind of have a sense of focus. However, also at the same time, you also would maintain some of the tables or data systems that are used across different domains as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the sense of business and data domains, they're getting pretty popular right now. I'm seeing a lot of customers just adopting that way of just giving ownership and some sort of I would say attention to that specific domain and how they can collaborate through all different teams. So yeah, I have seen this happening out there. Now, question just bouncing back to the Apache Iceberg stuff. Just out of curiosity, if you have some numbers or some ideas, would be great to see you throwing that out. Do you have any idea about largest tables or large tables that you guys use in Iceberg, or some idea of magnitude of terabytes of size or whatever?
Okay, well, I mean, I would say like a lot of our large tables definitely on the terabyte size, but God. I don't know exact number, but the larger one definitely on the terabyte side, and those usually kind of like the fact table that with kind of activity per record. And, Netflix is a popular entertainment service, and you can imagine how those tables would grow very rapidly.
Oh my goodness, very rapidly. Yeah, on that note, I've heard you saying like there's just fact tables. On inside of your team, do you guys have this discussion about one big table, wide tables, or star schema? Do you guys have this type of conversations internally, and how you're gonna, just make the data available? For which model you're gonna make it?
So, well, we definitely have a lot of discussion from a data modeling perspective. Like, hey, given the use case we have, what kind of granularity should we make this data? Should this data? What should this data be partitioned on? Like, there's a lot of optimization on the data modeling perspective that we do. However, this is the one thing I found it really interesting, is that online I see a lot of people talking about, hey, there's the star schema, here's the snowflake schema, but in reality, we never refer to that term like internally when we work. We will only just say, hey, here's the schema for the table. I'm going to partition on this column, how the row is going to order within each partition. Does this make sense? And also, we also talk about like, hey, what kind of dimension table we might need, but we almost never refer to those phrases. Does that make sense? That we never say, like, hey, this table should be a star schema. What's a snowflake? Yes. But we more talk about in terms of the the columns itself.
Yeah, no, but I think it's just in overall it makes even more sense if we are guys leaning towards data lake house, because it truly depends. For example, if you already have like a table or dimension that already have the granularity that you need, and at the same time you need to roll up a new table that plugs into that, so you don't have to do anything else than say, okay, this is the reference, and then you can query if you want, right? But the reason why I'm saying this is there's this big discussion about, should I deliver in a one big table, like a messy, gigantic table where you can just using partitioning and where clauses to, reduce the footprint and then get your data. Or no, we should break it down in dimensions, a lot of users, activities, I don't know, just something like that, products, and then you have like big fact table, pretty beefy, that you have like the IDs and just make queries around it. So I think this is a common data engineering question that I have seen just spiked up for all the, because of the data lakehouse adoption as well.
Yeah, I would say a lot of times you might also see table available in different formats too.
True.
Let's say, you have a table that's a dimension table, let's say for Netflix account, right? You might have one version that only reflects the most recent state of the account. However, there's use cases we have to do sort of time travel to a specific date. Say like, hey, I want to know what the status of that account on a specific day. And then for those use cases, you may also find a different table that is like also partitioned on the date so that you can do some of the time traveling. So I think one thing, not to forget is that you can have multiple representation of the table if the cost or the volume itself isn't that big a concern to have sort of duplicates. And honestly, I see this a lot, even from the perspective where we have to optimize both for batch and streaming use cases, because, for some streaming use cases, like we would store the table in partition by processing time, because that's the easiest, the most scalable way when we read the data from a Flink job. However, if you have any batch use cases where they have to break down by certain dimension, and also most batch use cases also only do analysis based on event time, right? So you might have another table that is repartitioned on event time so that the downstream user of who have batch-based analytical use cases can use those tables. Something
popped up now. Something popped up now for me. Yeah, it would be interesting. So there's a bunch of, I've noticed that there's like different tables for different situations. Also, different granularities and aggregations and time travel, append only, so on and so forth. So how, within the data pipeline ecosystem, how do you manage the pipeline per se? So for example, we have this table and this table, there's like 3 downstream processes that hooks on that one, but then we have to update this and propagate the changes to the other ones. So you're just using an orchestration tool to do that?
So I think that might be different case by case, because you'll have like tables who have a lot more horizontal use cases. For example, if I have a dimension table, like it might be used by both, personalization or experimentation analysis, or even on the content studio side or whatever. So like in a way, I don't know if this answers your question, but let me know if I can add more context. But we will kind of decouple the process of data availability to downstream. So within Netflix, like we have this concept of VTTS, which is called valid until timestamp. So VTTS is kind of an attribute you can publish associated with the iceberg table. And what that allows you to do is that any workflow can listen to that VTTS and know if the table is available. So that it in a way, it kind of decouple the upstream who's publishing the data to the table and the downstream who's reading from that data. So, the upstream workflow that is reading to the table, they don't have to worry about like what workflow is reading from me, or when I should trigger it. All I would tell and label the table is that, hey, this table have all the data until this timestamp. And no matter you want to consume it hourly or daily, you just listen to specific timestamp for the VTTS. So if there's a change, honestly, we would we'll have some data lineage tool that help us find the data user. And then sometimes we'll send emails to them, say like, hey, we're making some change. If you're using this column, it will be affecting you, or just like new columns adding to the table, just letting you know like, hey, this is new data available.
Perfect. No, that pretty much clear my question. Yeah, just on that note, to break it down, just two more topics about, there's like open source projects that Netflix works and just they maintains, which is Metaflow and Mentis. I know that there's some other ones. So can you just give one or two comments about Metaflow and Mentis, just pretty briefly?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not super familiar with Metaflow. I know it's a framework that's also created as part of Netflix to kind of making some of the machine learning use cases either. However, I don't directly working with that Metaflow specific framework. So I will say I won't comment too much on that. But on Mantis specific, I will say like that use case is a little bit different from the majority of data engineering use cases we have at the moment, because a comparable framework you might compare Mantis with will be Flink, because they both processing events in real time. However, Mantis is more optimized for use cases where you don't need at least data guarantee. So it will be good for use cases like observability, so that you want to be notified ASAP when there's some data anomaly was detected, and then would actually it's like from a data guarantee perspective, they might have some data loss. However, the latency perspective is a lot better than Flink. And however, for data engineering use cases, Flink is a better use case for us because it fits better for our data latency and also have better integration with infrastructure choices like Kafka and also Keystone, which is an internal streaming platform that we have.
Okay, well said. Okay, gotcha now. Yeah, cleared.
So that's something that we go to the third block, and something that we started to talk in the beginning of the introduction, and that I think we should can you draw a line between data engineering and software engineering nowadays? Like you see more of them merging in some places, more data engineering working as a software engineer, and so on and so forth. What do you see in these two areas?
Yeah, honestly, I think this is another even more difficult question beyond defining data engineering, because the fact is, in a lot of companies, data engineers are software engineers, and the line between them is not well defined these days. Like, you whatever data engineer is working on at Netflix, like they might be categorized as software engineers in other companies. But however, because based on what I think data engineering is about making data accessible in optimized forms, right? In a way, it's like data engineers are also software engineers, but we work with different frameworks and tech stacks that is mainly focused on processing, transforming data, and then we work a lot closer with downstream users of the data. Like, for example, it could be data analysts, data scientists, or algorithm engineers, and then we make design decisions based on the use cases of the data. However, for software engineer, I don't think it. Even when I say software engineer, I feel like I'm self-doubting myself, because what is a software engineer? That's not a data engineer. It might depend. Are you doing web development or other type of work? I don't know.
It's still unclear.
It's a trick question.
It's a trick question. No, yeah, I think it's super complex actually to draw a line, because we don't even know what data engineering is actually, because you do a lot of things. And I know that software engineer overlaps with data engineering, vice versa as well, in terms of querying data, just adapting ways to how we store data somewhere so the data engineers can pick it up from there and just building their pipelines. And so it's really hard. Me personally, I think that in the end of the day, what I'm just trying to convey here is, in some sort of extent, data engineers and software engineers, they need to know a programming language, and they need to know how to write SQL, because they have to understand how they access data, because it's not writing anymore, in my opinion. It's not about just, now we have a multitude of NoSQL databases and databases that can simply pick the data, just throw the JSON there. But at the same time, the software engineer now has this, I would say, this concern in how they're going to put the data and where they're going to put the data, and how this is going to unlock the data-driven concept where you can unlock data scientists and data teams and data analysts to consume the data from and leverage, pipelines that could give some end results to the end users. So I think we're going to see more and more these two roles just combining themselves in order to, in the end of the day, just making data better, just making data accessible for end users, because I think that's the ultimate goal. And I steal that from you.
I love kind of your comments on this, because one thing I also want to mention here is that as a data engineer, we also should, adopt engineering best practice whenever it's possible. Like, for example, adopting CI/CD as part of your development process,
Perfect.
Writing unit tests, integration tests, because what you're maintaining, although it's data focused, it's still a software system, and then those are the good engineering process can ensure that your system are reliable and it's also scalable. And also another perspective is that, honestly, I see a lot of the data engineering upstream, it is actually data that's produced by back-end services or microservices,
Perfect.
right? And
Yes.
one thing I sometimes found it could be a little bit challenging is that the data contract between the software engineering team and also the data engineering team. Because a lot of times we actually would have a lot of data issues because, hey, upstream is logging things differently than the way we expect it to be. Although our system isn't having any issues in the logic itself, however, when upstream changes, you're getting a lot of problem in your output data because it's not meeting the expectation of your data. So, I felt like as part of my life as a data engineer, a lot of the problem we have to deal with is that how can we work better with other engineering team to establish better data contract and also enforce those contracts in a programmatic way so that we have less unexpected source data changes that might lead to more unexpected downstream impact.
Yes, no, I couldn't agree more. I think data contracts between the backend systems and the data acquisition team or the people that captures the data is just being like, it's been there forever, right? I mean, schemas are the huge, it solves a big problem, but also it has like this drawback of, just sometimes blocking some, I would say, evolutions of the applications and how that breaks down to the other downstream resources. And it's interesting to see your point on that because, especially for streaming, for example, data, when we have like bunch of microservices writing into Kafka pretty eagerly, and then you're just consuming the data, and then you have this per topic based usually, but sometimes we face customers that they just, at the same topic, they send two different contracts and two different schemas. So it gets pretty hard to understand and to, see how we're going to decouple, how then we're going to consume the data from. And Mateus had a huge problem in the bank.
I had some bad memories on that.
Where they used to throw all of their different data at the same topic, and then we had to understand what was a debit, what was a credit, different things at the same topic. So it was pretty hard to say because that topic didn't have any schema that complied to data contract. So it was crazy.
I still have nightmares on that.
Yeah.
I still have nightmares on that because I recall that I come back and they call it's like an old trauma. I was like, okay, no. Every customer that I go, I explain to them that we have to know what's the purpose of where we're gonna put the data. Okay. You're not gonna. It's like I'm gonna put all data inside of one folder in the data lake. Everything that's gonna be in there. So why is the meaning for that to put everything? No, because it's centralized, but it's not governance. It's not.
funny fact for you, we went in a consulting stuff. It was like we actually hop in a war room with 17 different people because the system was blowing out. And then they were just, hey, we need to solve this problem on Kafka and blah, blah, and they explained the scenario. And then when you log into Kafka, we saw like 100,000 topics. Each one of these topics had 100 replication partitions with 3 replication factors. And we were kind of, okay, that's interesting, but why are you guys using this 100 partitions? They said, no, because it's performance-wise. And
to scale.
To scale. So, okay, but how many data you're just getting that? So it's just like 100 events per minute or something like that. It's like, okay, you're just blowing up the system because you're causing contention on the network that communicates for all the replications, stuff like that. And they had like 7 brokers in a cluster. So it was crazy. And they were like, hey, guys, this is not the right way to do it. You don't have to replicate data in this way. You don't have to partition data in this way. And they were like, yeah, Kafka doesn't work because, there is no way to get the real data. Sometimes you get 1, sometimes you get 2. It's not ordered. Because it's ordered per partition base, it's not ordered through the topic. And they were like, okay, is that true? And he said, yes, but just the long story short, that system were the most critical system from them. And they didn't even know how Kafka would work behind the scenes. So sometimes we just get so desperate, right? We start to feeling blue and just, having some fainting in front of the customer because they're like, hey, you must understand this before you're just putting that in production.
Was a little worse than you recall. That was another bad memory that you remember me. Because that's the people have the problem that is people watch this in the internet. That's something that everybody should listen. Everybody that's listening to us, before you heard a lot of words like Trino, Flink, Iceberg. Everything that you listen to, first of all, read documentation, understand what you do, understand the ins and outs. Because people, especially in the Kafka community, people like throwing Kafka inside of a company and say, okay, let's see this is working. And then it's not working. But it's not next finish. It's not something that you can just apply one day without understanding and just start to producing consumer data. And that was even worse because Luan asked, I recall that was in the call on listening, and we went, okay, what's the X of this? What's the acknowledgement that you guys are working? And the guy said,
X?
What?
Is this a food or this is something?
What is?
What X means?
And then I said, okay, let's stop talking.
Okay, let's solve your problem. Solve your problem. Give me the callback. What is callback? Yeah, there's no callback whatsoever from the application.
Now understand.
So how should we do something if you don't understand what? These are silly issues that you may not face at Netflix, but sometimes people hear about, Kafka, and Kafka is inside of Netflix, so let's put it here because it's going to work. And eventually they don't know too much about it in order to put this in mainstream, and then you start to see the silly and problems, arising.
Yeah, I definitely see what you mean. I think one kind of privilege that we get from working at a bigger company with a relatively big data organization is that the roles of people working in data is highly specialized. Like we would have a real-time, data infrastructure team who take care of maintaining all this Kafka cluster, and then they do some of the optimization for us. Well, at the same time, we don't have to do a lot of those manual tuning and monitoring on the Kafka topics. So that's one thing, it's good in a way because that allows the data engineers to really focus on more of data engineering work, while the infrastructure team help us a lot with more infrastructure tuning perspective. And also another good aspect, I think it will be interesting is that, I definitely agree with the fact that, adopting a new technology is easy. If you just say, hey, I just store my data in, I copy whatever configuration from some example I see and put it in, although that doesn't really apply to the specific data topic that I'm using, right? But also another thing is that I feel like we're going to evolve in a direction where maybe those knowledge isn't going to be critical for everybody anymore because maybe the framework or the tooling you're using are smart enough to do more of the auto-tuning. Like, for example, hey, if this Kafka topic is only 100 events, maybe they will make some recommendation about the replication or partition. Like similarly, even apply to batch, right? Let's say if you have a Spark job that is doing a lot of shuffling and joining, it could help you make some recommendation about the tuning some of those configurations. So it relieves you from some of those manual jobs you have to do it today by looking at the different partitions from different tables, all the event volume from Kafka topic to make those decisions manually.
Spot on. And, I think we spoke a little bit about dreadful times working with these technologies, but I'm going to twist a little bit that and just making that following question, it kind of links up with the following question. What is the most exciting part of the data engineering? What's the first time that pops up on your brain when you say, oh, what I like to do, what I love to do on the data engineering side? Do you have anything particularly? I know it's hard. Like
my favorite part about data engineering?
Yeah, communication. What do you think?
I would say it's, I think in general, I think working in data engineering is very exciting because just the fact that the data you are working with is so massive, and then when you're looking at one row of data, it doesn't tell you anything. It won't tell you, hey, this user did this thing. However, as a data engineer, you can leverage so many tools available there and build something and enable your team to be able to actually understand your business or your product better and make better decisions. I think that is the most magical part about data engineering that I like to describe it. It's doing a jigsaw puzzle. Like, when you just only have one piece of puzzle, like, you're not sure what the whole picture looks like, right? However, once you put it together, it's just that feeling of understanding.
It is fascinating.
The image or the story behind it is very similar to, the kind of the satisfaction when you work as a data engineer. You're always trying to, dig all the insights behind the data. And also another aspect is just, and also that, one thing is that if you only have a data engineering team, you cannot solve a business problem. Like, you need so many team collaboration together to deliver a good user experience, right? True. I think one thing that's really, motivating for me as a data engineer is that it's just fascinating how so many different teams come together on this project, and everybody only have to make some changes in their own system, but once that pull together, you deliver experience. Someday when we watch Netflix, when they see the most liked badge, I build a feed to enable it, and they're going to find this movie that they didn't know they would like. So it's part of being also a bigger team and using data to deliver a user experience that might let some family have a lot of fun that evening watching a show. So that's also another very satisfying part as a data engineer as well.
Wow, you said it pretty well in these lines. I feel fascinated as well whenever we just see the whole picture, and the building blocks of that is just not you as yourself, but your entire team just working around the clock, different ideas, different strategies, different approaches, and then you just convey something and you build like a super neat experience for the end user. That should be so, I'll say relieving. You should feel so proud of that. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, sometimes my fun part is that when we watch Netflix in the evening with my family, I would tell them like, hey, I help build that.
Well, I think, everyone in the data spectrum should be, tempted to one day to do some, hey, that thing? So my team work on that, or me specifically, I work on that piece. So yeah, that's pretty amazing. I think it just makes you feel proud of yourself, not only yourself, but all the effort that had been taken in order to put that in production and just seeing that thing be rolled and available for downstream users. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and also just pivot this conversation a little bit more, because this is something I'm really passionate about. It's about like, how do you build a data engineering culture, and how do you make data engineering visible within a big organization? And also part of it is also important for a data engineering team to be able to directly relate to their work to the impact that it's making to the company and the business. And because a lot of times, like sometimes, I've mentioned this before in my other blog posts, is that, usually the data engineering system isn't the direct output of a project. There's going to be downstream who's integrating that to their system or building a dashboard or metrics. And if the collaboration model isn't right, then you feel like, hey, I'm just building the system. I don't quite see that what impact it's making, or how is that associated with, the improvement we're making for our business, right? And also, just like that example I was giving, it's like, I know that my data feed was empowering some product feature, and then that was well received. And just that direct association of data engineering work and the end product just gives so much motivation and visibility to the data engineering team as well.
Yeah, it is. And I think this is one of the major problems today in organizations. And unfortunately, that would be one of the causes why we have seen so many layoffs as well. I mean, at least in Brazil, we had many layoffs, because in overall, at least in Brazil, we've seen a lot of teams not delivering value. And I think one of the points that pretty much enlightens the thing is that sometimes you do a fantastic job, but you're not being able to show how that job impact so many other people, so many other areas, and how people could leverage that because of culture, because of how do you position yourself and your team in a manner that they could see, value on your squad, and how do you deliver that. So this is I think honestly, if you agreed on that, maybe in the upcoming months we could record another podcast to talk about data engineering culture, and how can we just build a culture for data teams or people, then how can we show off their projects, how they can make better decisions around how they share this among the company, what the strategies that could be taken in consideration. I think that should be pretty valuable.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic. It's so much to talk about data engineering, isn't it?
I'm noting down here because I just want to make sure that I don't want to miss the point. I think this is truly important, and sometimes people are so much down into just building the technical stuff, and people sometimes doesn't even see how effort we put in that in the technical stuff, and sometimes you cannot give the glamour, and we cannot show how amazing our team, where people collab with that. Sometimes people cannot see the value. The company doesn't see the value, and they think that, that specific squad or that specific team didn't deliver the value that was expected. But actually, this is not true. Technically, we did that, but we have to think in different layers, and we have to know how to socialize that, how to make it, digestible for business people, because business people doesn't understand tech. And to be honest, it doesn't even matter for the business standpoint if you're using Kafka, Pulsar, or whatever. It means that you have to deliver what is expected. So you have to do a translation between the technical and the business perspective to give the value to the end user.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Gonna go through the last questions. I know that we're just pretty much off here, but yeah, let's go. And thank you so much for the time. I appreciate. Do you believe that the data science and the data engineering are kind of just pretty much devil twins? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just saying that I'm just kidding, because I've seen a lot of data scientists saying that 17 to 8% of their job are plumbing, are munging, and transforming, just adapting data to do the ADA, and then finally just building the models on top of that. Do you think that data engineers and data scientists, they are kind of merging themselves in some sort of extent in terms of how can collaborate, or just let me rephrase it better, how they can collaborate together in order to reduce a little bit of the effort of the data scientists to do like tumbling, and then just leaving that to the data engineer, and then how can the data scientists could leverage this from the data pipeline perspective, right? So how Netflix, or how do you envision that, just these two teams working, collabing together?
Yeah, so I think one thing might be helpful to to help data engineer and data scientist collaboration better is I think one thing is that to have a clear definition of responsibilities, because ideally data scientists shouldn't have to worry too much about cleaning the data. In ideal cases, like they shouldn't be worrying about, hey, what is unknown different from lowercase unknown, and hopefully those kind of cases is already being handled in the data engineering system, so that they can mainly focusing on building models, running analysis. And also on the other hand, the data engineering team, they should also focusing on like making data available in optimized formats and also in clean formats as well. And honestly, I think a lot of times maybe I've seen data scientists where they had to do some of the data engineering work, maybe because they don't have a data engineering team, or the data engineering team don't have the bandwidth of support that specific use cases they have. And also, like, this kind of come back to the point about like how can data engineers build data systems that is easily usable, by data scientists or data analysts or algorithm engineers, right? I think what I believe is most important is to have data engineers have the business context. They need to understand what's the business problem they solve, so that they can build data system that's opinionated and have the quality that's good enough for the use cases that have in mind. Because when data engineers don't have business context, they don't know what the data is being used for, then it's hard to make decisions in every aspect as part of your data system. And, you might just have a data output that is just like, I don't know what's the difference between a basic 1 plan versus basic 2 plan. So I'll just let it flow through. However, from a downstream perspective, it's like, hey, like this two should be the same, because for this business problem we're solving, they are the same, and maybe that should be being handled as part of the data engineering system. So I think one thing, I've seen that cause problems, like even some of the mistakes I've made in the past, was that, sometimes data scientists that they had problem using the data tables I built because I didn't have a good understanding of what they're trying to do, so that there's a lot of things that could have been handled in the engineering system. I just didn't see it. But once you have that contact, you can see better that what is the transformation that's needed to make it easier for downstream use cases. But also, in a way, it might be different per team, because they're just, teams out there, they don't not big enough to hire data engineers. So you have data scientists who do the end-to-end data ingestion to transformation to running models, running analysis, and all the way, for a dashboard or whatever. But I guess in short to the problem, I think what data engineer would really help for data scientists is that build a opinionated data set and with the good the business context that they are aware of.
Yes. And I think that's pretty much linked up with on my opinion, just the culture, and also, this ability to being able to talk with different teams and they know their responsibilities, as you said. Because, for example, in Brazil, we've seen a lot of customers just failing miserably in terms of just being able to leverage reusability on their systems. So they just pick a data source for the data science team and they just do a bunch of transformations. And on the flip side of the coin, they do exactly the same thing on the data engineering side. And they're not sharing that information amongst team. And I think one of the reasons why it happens is the culture, because it doesn't allow you to communicate throughout different people in different squads and say, hey, we are building the system that's going to do this, and likes, a set of these features. And hey, data science could leverage that instead of just spending more time doing the plumbing. We are doing that for you. So you guys could use this as a downstream and just pick data from there. And sometimes communication is one of the hugest barriers that we have for this adoption and just merging of the teams to make it better and suitable for the end users. And this is one of the things that we, as here in Brazil, Mateus and I, are just working pretty just enforcing that culture that is not only about changing technology, people, it's all about changing the culture as well. To understand that you guys need to work in tandem, you guys have to collaborate in order to make something reusable. And reusable is key because you're going to do batch, you're going to do streaming, you're going to do personalization, you're going to do exploration. So we should reuse things as a team to leverage, to reduce our effort and being able to time to market faster the things that we're building.
Yeah, I love your perspective on it because I do agree. I think part of it also have to do with the culture and the organization structure as well, because I've definitely seen where like there are data engineers and data scientists, however, they live in kind of their own silos. Like maybe I'm working on the marketing data problems and then there's some shared data could be used for sales. I didn't know what sales data available or how can I get access to that. So everybody is kind of duplicating some of the work and not being aware of the data being able to be reused. And like to your point, like one thing is that making data accessible, across the organization and discoverable, and also part of the culture is also important, right? Like across different domains, there's going to be common data challenges. How can we build, solutions that can solve more of them versus the individual ones so that it's more maintainable?
Yeah, we should cover as much ground as we can in order to do reusability. Yeah. Two last questions. I'm going to promise it's going to be a rapid one. But I think it just pretty much, it's inclined or it's aligned about what we have been speaking for this past 1 hour and 15 minutes. Amazing. So time flies. Soft skill wise. So there's a bunch of them, but what are the ones that you judge would be the most important for data engineers to have today? Because sometimes, at least in Brazil, I could say, they think that being like the best technical person ever, we're going to make you a better person at the job. And we, Mateus and I, we can completely disagree with that statement. I think it's a yin yang. It's more about just being able to, being a good technical, but also be able to do the other soft skill stuff in order to put you in a perspective where you can understand, all the facets of the problems, not only the technical one. So I think it's a more being able to understand the both sides. So what do you agree with that? Do you think it's more about these lines? And if yes, what are the needed skills or the most important skills for the data engineer to have in the soft skill landscape?
Yeah, so it would be hard to pick one of the most important one, but I would say I always like to say soft skills are just as important as technical skills. I wouldn't say if one person is excellent at soft skill but cannot code, I don't think that person can be a good engineer because I would say there's a minimal bar you have to meet. Hey, if you can't write say from, then that's gonna be a problem. However, you don't have to be technical enough to, let's say, invent the next Kafka so that you could be qualified as data engineer. So I feel like in the community, even in the software engineering overall, sometimes there's this gatekeeping kind of attitude. Feels like, you have to be super technical to make it. Although at the same time, if you work in this industry, you'll see a lot of excellent engineers. They're technical, but also what really makes them shine and what really makes them amazing is that they're so good at collaboration. They're so good at navigating ambiguity, right? So for me, because I mentioned, because being a data engineer, you have to be very good at cross-functional collaboration. You have to be able to understanding other systems, which is either, reading other documentation or talking to other people. And also a lot of data problems coming to you, it isn't well defined. They're not going to tell you hey, build me this batch pipeline using Spark, writing to this table with this schema, partition by this key, or write me this Flink job that's reading from this Kafka topic and how you enrich the data. So all the data problems coming to data engineer isn't well defined. And then honestly, to me, the most challenging part is to navigate that, ambiguity, narrow down the requirements, and also being able to work with all other systems to build an elegant data solution. And to do that, you do need technical skill, although at the same time, being able to clearly communicate what you're looking for, your questions, and also your concerns, and also being able to get the necessary context you need to make good decisions. Like, for example, as an informed captain on a specific matter is also a very important skill you have to nail as well.
Yeah, I just on that one, me personally, I think there's one specific thing that is pretty important and pretty shines on my on my eyes, that they're wearing hats and stuff, right? So what I mean by that, it's a little bit underrated. I don't see people talking too much about it, but I think it's truly important in the way that you position yourself against the different people that you have within the company. So, for example, if you're talking to a data architect, it would be super great for me to use the data architect jargons, right? So whereas if I'm just dealing with the C-level, of course that I'm not gonna bring this huge technical background explaining the ins and outs. They don't want to hear that. Surely they want to hear you saying things that, pretty much sticks with they're expecting to. So
yeah.
I think the situation of, okay, I'm talking to the data engineer, let me wear the data engineering hat, and then I talk about all the exciting stuff. If I'm talking to this level, then let me wear a hat where I can sum it up things I can say about deadlines, the importance of what we are building, what are the ETAs of that, what things that are taken into consideration, what could we bring more. And I think this extra mile, it's so important because it makes you an asset that is valuable asset because you can be able to communicate throughout the different zones and different people in different scenarios. Me, for example, I'm so excited on that spectrum. I like to trying to be able to bring different information, same information, different ways to different people. I like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely resonate with it because one thing that I learned also just with experience, like depending on who you are talking to and also the meeting, let's say it's the meeting or it's the email, depending on the audience of it, you want to provide the right level of details, right? Because if it's somebody, like you say, executive, you don't want to bring out all the number protections that I'm applying, but also you want to be effectively asking the question or giving them the answer they're looking forward to at just the right level of details. And also, another thing I want to mention is that I know not everybody agree that this is a really critical skill. However, I found in a way that giving good presentation is really also really important as well. For example, what we're talking about, like how do you showcase your values to the business? And in a way, giving a good presentation is what really tie all the kind of lines together, showing off, hey, this is all the values that this data engineering team is providing. And sometimes you might feel like, well, just do the work, people will see it, but in a really huge company, people are all busy with their own things, and delivering a really good presentation can really put people's eye on it.
Yeah, I 100% with you on that. But last question right now, finally.
Do you believe, Xiran, that we were always talking about community, but do you believe like the community drives the world of technology nowadays, like being part of communities like open source, no open source, be part of this data or non-data communities really help us to improve as professionals, as someone that brings solution to the company?
I think the answer is absolutely yes, because my experience is that when you only work for a specific company and talking to the people within the company, you are only looking at, this very small scope, given all of the existing, let's say, business context, tech stack that's available, or just also the just the existing setup of the company. However, when you spend time talking to other data engineers, the community, or going to meetup or conferences, trying to learn what are the problems that others are solving, how they are solving problems, you can bring those ideas to your own company, and that will give you more inspiration ideas how we can solve it smartly. So in a way, it's like well, they're talking about like within company, there could be silos, right? Like this group of people solving marketing data problems, group of people solving sales problem. However, if they don't have a shared context or shared data, then they are kind of duplicating effort or not seeing the common problem that could be solved in a more elegant way. And taking one step further, when you're only looking at your own data problems and the existing technology you're using, then it feels like your kind of ideas and knowledge is also kind of restrained within that small circle you're in. But when you look outside to see, hey, what are other people's challenge? Is it similar to mine? Can I borrow some of those smart ideas from other people? And then you learn a lot more from that approach.
Wow, 1 hour and 25 minutes of podcast. It just so rapidly. It was crazy. I'm going to say this online. That definitely was one of the best podcasts that I ever had in my entire career.
Easily.
So really impressive. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to talk to you. We are so stoked to spend this hour talking about so many different things. And I truly think that we should, just go even more deep in terms of the culture and other podcasts that we can just do together. And I just want to appreciate and be so thankful for the opportunity to talk to you. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, likewise. This is just a good experience. First of all, you guys made it so easy for me, so I don't have to worry about anything other than just come here, talk about, just my thoughts and ideas. And then this is just like a great, I would say, environment, like I feel relatively safe to talk whatever I feel my thoughts are. And I have to be honest, like I was invited to a different podcast before. Well, don't mention that in the podcast. I assume that already put this on.
Yeah.
And then like I was talking to the podcast host because we're just exploring, hey, is this something we could talk about? And then honestly, I didn't feel like it was like it was a lot of judgment in a way. So I didn't really feel like, hey, my opinions are welcome in a way, but I feel like this place, this podcast specifically working with, you and Mateus, it's a great experience. And also I love hearing just from your experience, your stories as well. It has been amazing. And honestly, at the beginning, I was a little bit nervous, but no, it did just feels like we're just having a conversation.
I didn't even notice. But all right. Mateus, your last comments?
Yeah, what I could say was what a class. To learn about this vision that you have, Xinran, to give like this opinion, your thoughts, your experience in these huge companies that you work with. So it's like I always told Luan that every podcast we learn about it, and this one is by far one of them that we learn a lot. Like 1 hour and almost 1 hour and a half that we talk about, and we see like the passion that you have about working with data engineering and working with technology. Like it's really like something that is not only technical. The technical stuff is there, like you really love the technical stuff, but you love all the aspects of data engineering. That's something that not everybody have the same energy.
Yes.
It's something that
True.
is I can say like
it shines on you.
It's something like you really love it what you do, and what I can say is. Thank you, Luan, for being here because it was amazing. We have to do. I told Luan probably gonna do more podcasts with Xinran because I think we're gonna have like a lot of things that you talk about.
I had a blast. I had a blast. It was amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. A lot of times I have colleagues who telling me that I'm the most energetic engineer.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. Be passionate about it. This is the key ingredient to make people, right? You resonate this energy, and I don't have any doubts that this goes around and people feel energetic, people feel happy, and you just propagate like some good vibes and good things to people. That's so amazing. I think we need people that does that because today world is so difficult. We faced COVID, a lot of people died. We lost parents. We lost people. And, if we take a look at the world by itself, it's so hard, right? So, just having someone that just brings this energy, hey guys, let's collaborate, that's this, and just always passionate, always happy, That's what makes difference. And I think you're gonna make difference not on Netflix, but in any place that you totally gonna work. You're gonna make difference because the energy tells you a lot about your passion, and passion drives people, and people is passionate about passion. So you have to feel passion because it warms up your heart, right? So I think we need that more and more to make solutions that people is gonna feel, oh my God, that's amazing. You know, and you're not going to build that if you don't have like a pretty warm heart and a huge motivation and drive to do something outstanding. So you are that person. You are that person.
Yep.
Well, thank you for saying it. You know, I hope when this podcast come out, I mean, people listen to it, and then that would make them, you know, feel more excited about data engineering as well. I hopefully we can, you know, people always say like they're going to forget what you did, they're going to forget what you said, but they're not going to forget like how they make you feel, right?
Yes. Yeah. Hopefully we're going to propagate this message. Yeah, that's a wrap. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for being with us again, and just I see you soon. I'm totally gonna have another podcast with you here with us.
Yeah, I mean, I love to. I feel like there's so many things we haven't deep dive into. I love to talk more about it as well. And this is just a great experience for me. And I love working with you guys. And yeah, so I don't know how long you're going to cut this, but let me know, like, if you want me to, like, I don't know, do like a review of a draft or something. I'm happy to.
Of course.
Okay.
You bet. I'm going to do it.
Okay. Yeah. Although I personally hate listening to myself talking.